Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about our crazy week that we have had with Isaac. It's kind of just going to be like a life update, and we have had quite the week. I am going to talk about what happened and what we're doing now and what the plan is with him and everything. Basically, Monday night was kind of strange to begin. I went out to dinner with a few of my girlfriends. Seth was taking care of the boys and he was going to put them down to bed by himself, which he like never does. We always do bedtime together, but it was just Seth that night. And I got home after they'd already gone down for bed, and he told me they were, especially Isaac, was really fussy going down, which isn't like him. He just was super difficult to get to go to bed. But he had eventually fallen asleep. And so we just I didn't think anything of it, just thought he might have had a harder night. So then we went to bed, and I woke up at about, I think it was like 12:01, 12:02, it was almost exactly midnight, and I heard screaming, which my boys sleep through the night every night. Pretty much, they maybe wake up once a week randomly, like in the middle of the night, but they just have a normal cry. It's not a scream. And Isaac was screaming bloody murder. And it wasn't a continuous scream. It was like, ah, 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 like a pulsing scream at the top of his lungs. So I jumped out of bed, went to go see what was wrong, and I picked him up, and he was stiff as a board. Like just completely stiff. And he is very stiff because of his cerebral palsy. It makes his limbs very stiff, but I had never seen anything like that, so I was like, that's weird. So I laid him back down, I went and made a bottle. It only took me like a minute. I came back in and he was still screaming at the top of his lungs, and I was like, that is weird, like the light's on, I'm coming in here to comfort him, he should not still be screaming like this. I set the bottle down, I picked him up, and I took him into our bedroom, which is down the hall. As I was walking him to our bedroom, his mannerisms started to change. So he was no longer screaming, but he was breathing very rapidly, and he was starting to laugh very strangely. He was kind of like, ha ha ha, and then he'd stop laughing and he'd start breathing really fast, and then start giggling and then start breathing really fast. And I was like, what is going on? And even just in the few seconds that he started doing that, and I like came into our room and I told Seth, I think something's wrong, he started to have spasms and started to convulse. And it wasn't like a normal, what I imagine like a seizure would look like. Because I have seen someone with epilepsy that was like my age have a seizure, and they like dropped to the floor and their whole body was convulsing. It was very dramatic. Like, it was not like that. His eyes were just repetitively rolling back in his head and coming back and rolling back. And he started to have head twitches, like he was going like this over and over, and the eye thing and the neck thing, like him twitching his head, immediately I knew that's what was happening. I knew he was having a seizure, and it was the first time he had had one as far as we were concerned. We were a little worried about him having absent seizures, which are like very small, like a few seconds long, where he just would kind of like doze off or glare off at something for a few seconds and then come back to it. And those are called absent seizures, but we weren't sure if that's what he had been having for the past few months. But this was like a legitimate grand mal seizure, which is what they call like the big ones. So at that point, Seth was out of bed, and I was like, I think he's having a seizure. And Seth's like, okay, well, what do we do? And I'm like, okay, well, we need to take him to the ER, especially because it was the first time. Seth hurried, put a shirt on, and didn't even put shoes on. He just ran out the door with him because we have a hospital. Normally driving, it's like 10 minutes away, but I think it was midnight, there was no cars on the road, and I think Seth got there in like 5 minutes. While he was driving to the ER, Isaac threw up in his car seat. And then once he ran him into the ER, he was throwing up a ton. Like, he's spit up every once in a while, but he's never really thrown up. It was like throwing up. Like, when I got to the ER, Seth was like covered in throw up. So I stayed back home because Sawyer, his twin brother, was here. And I stayed back with Sawyer, and I called my parents, I called Seth's parents, and Seth's mom said, okay, I'm gonna come to your house so that you can go and be with Isaac. And I told her originally not to do that because I didn't think that I could go be with Isaac because of COVID. You can usually only have one support person at the hospital, and I assumed that was the same with the ER, but I was wrong. Then Seth's mom came to our house. She got there within 15-20 minutes, and we switched. So she came and watched Sawyer even though he was asleep. Took her car to the hospital, and by the time I had gotten to the hospital, it had been about an hour since Seth had originally left. And by the time I had gotten there, he was still having this seizure. So by the time I had gotten there, he had gotten an IV, he had gotten his first round of medications to stop it, and he had gotten a chest x-ray and a CT scan. So all those things had passed and he was still having a seizure, which is pretty long. They told us a regular adult seizure lasts about an hour, they told us a regular adult long seizure will last 5 to 7 minutes, and it had been nearly an hour. So that was really freaky for me to walk in there, and I assumed he would just be sleeping or, kind of sedated or just laying there. No, he was still having that seizure, and it was scary. And they were talking about giving him more meds, but actually just a few minutes after I had gotten there, he had stopped. So I didn't have any time to think or process that past hour because I didn't have time to cry, I didn't have time to panic. It was just get into the hospital, make sure Sawyer's okay, sleeping in bed, make sure my mother-in-law gets here, make sure I have a way to get to the hospital, and I didn't break down until I was at the hospital with Isaac and Seth. And it was just horrible seeing him all, have all the monitors on him and the oxygen again, because he was in the NICU for 33 days when he was born, and that was the last time I had seen him like that. And I can't even express to you the feelings that flooded back to me re-seeing him with all of that on his body when I thought I would never have to see that again. It was terrifying, and as a mother, it was literally just the scariest, most horrible thing, because seizures can be underlying, it can be underlying for something pretty major. Luckily, that wasn't the case here. His CT came back normal, and when I say normal, it came back matching his old MRIs. He had a brain bleed before he was born, and so we had known that had happened, and that was the reason that he probably had that seizure, because they warned us when he was born, because of the brain damage, that could be something that could happen to him as he grew and as his brain grew. So that, ended up being a reality, which is unfortunate. We were lucky enough that his CT looks normal and didn't have any more bleeding or any more brain damage because of that seizure. We still don't know for sure. We're doing an MRI in the next week or so to confirm that. So far, that came back good. They did a chest x-ray because they wanted to make sure he didn't aspirate any of his vomit, and they told us that a lot of people do because they lay on their backs and they can aspirate. So but that came out fine, so we were lucky. So at this point, he was sleeping in our arms in the emergency room, and they needed him to be transferred to the children's hospital. So the ER can do pretty much anything, but when it comes to actually monitoring them and getting a diagnosis and all that, it has to be done at the children's hospital because he's an infant. So our children's hospital is 25 minutes away, and it's a wonderful, amazing children's hospital. I'm so grateful we have such an amazing one, but it's far away. Well, but when you drive in the middle of the night and you follow an ambulance that's going really fast, then you can get there fast. But anyways, they had to take him they did the life flight crew, but they took him via ambulance to our hospital, our children's hospital. And the reason why we couldn't take him there, even though he was done having a seizure, is because he was still hooked up to everything. He was still getting an IV, he was still on oxygen. His oxygen saturation was actually really good. He dipped a little when he was having a seizure. By the time it was controlled, it was up to normal, but they just wanted to keep him on it just in case he had another seizure. So that's why he had to be in the ambulance. And because of COVID, we could not ride with him in the ambulance, which was so horrible. We had to drive separately following the ambulance to the hospital, which was one of the hardest parts. So we went to the children's hospital and they took him to the ER there. And then we were in the ER there for a couple hours, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, and he was pretty much sleeping in our arms the whole time. And they were just kind of re-asking us what happened, regaining information, you know, just trying to process what the story is, you know, what his background is. And then they moved us, almost, I was to say, it's almost 5 in the morning now, 4:35 a.m. They moved us up to like the regular part of the children's hospital, just like inpatient. And that's when they did his EEG. So an EEG is like a brain, it like analyzes your brain activity and makes sure that it's normal and there's no underlying seizure activity happening, because sometimes people can have seizures and you can't really tell. Sorry, my camera was full, so I got cut off. But basically they did his EEG and that lasted a few hours and that came back normal. He wasn't having any underlying seizures. He never had another seizure while we were there. And they put him on a medication called Keppra, and then they gave us rescue medication in case he has another prolonged seizure like that. So the rescue meds are for a seizure that lasted longer than 5 minutes, and they gave us a few of them. So like we have some in my diaper bag and at home, and we have some with like my parents who watch him and Seth's parents who watch him a lot. So we have that in case of emergency now. Anyways, it was just a really scary night. We ended up getting discharged the next day after he had been observed for a while and he wasn't having any more activity. He wasn't having any more seizure activity, so they thought he would be safe to come home. The past week has been extremely difficult, so he did not have a good response to Keppra, which is the seizure medication they put him on. He was super lethargic and grumpy and agitated for several days, wasn't eating, you know, barely eating anything for a few days. And so Seth and I and our pediatrician made the decision to wean him off of it and then get him on something else when we meet with a neurologist later this week. But we do have the rescue meds just in case he has another one. It just was not a good fit for him if he's not eating, and you know, his loss of appetite and all that was not a good sign. So, but it was so strange because when he was on it, it like kind of dulls your central nervous system, and with his cerebral palsy he is very stiff, and that's why he can't sit on his own and do all that. And I took him to physical therapy the morning after all this happened, or 2 mornings after, while he was on the Keppra, and he could sit on his own and do all these things and put weight on his hands and lay on his tummy and do all these things he could not do before. And so our physical therapist said that's a really good sign when we eventually do treatments for his CP, that anything that will dull those nerve endings can help him progress. Because if seizure medication alone can do that, like actual muscle, I don't know how to explain it, but like medication that's meant to suppress your muscle and kind of like relax those muscles that are tightening up, can just like, will possibly work wonders for him. So that was a really good sign. That was super like comforting to me, seeing him just on that do so much better. So I'm hoping that we can find something for him that kind of mimics that same kind of muscle relaxing side effect. I know for a fact he'll be able to progress once he has that under control. And it's unfortunate now that we're not on the Keppra anymore, that he is really stiff again. And as we weaned him off his medicine, he's also been super agitated, and I'm sure his body just doesn't know what's going on. He's just been an angry baby for several days now, and Seth and I are absolutely exhausted. He's been crying nonstop. Of course, when all of this was happening, he's getting these 2 teeth coming in, which can't be fun. But, you know, we're just trying to do everything we can for him and keep him comfortable. And it was really scary, and I really hope I can start putting out some like normal lifestyle content soon. I just thought I'd come on here and share what happened to us in case any of you, I know I have a ton of moms on Instagram who messaged me when this happened and said, how did you know he was having a seizure in the middle of the night? Because they have children with cerebral palsy or epilepsy, and that's like one of their fears. And luckily he started screaming before he had a seizure, and a lot of people can feel it coming on and they start getting neurotic, and that's why at least we think that he was screaming beforehand. It's just what happened to us, and a lot of moms were curious like what actually happened and how I knew and what they did. Yeah, that's just what happened. I'm pretty numb at this point. Like, my brain, when I have trauma things happen to me, my brain immediately just tries to like quickly repair it, and I don't really like, I'm not like really emotional for a long time. I'm very Like, I don't know how to explain it. I get very tough very fast. I cried a lot at the hospital, but once I was home, I'm like, okay, we're home. What's happened happened. We know what to do now. We have medication in case it happens again. And I'm just I suppress it a little bit. Like, even thinking about that night, I'm just it's like pieces because my brain's already trying to like get rid of it. I really, really, really am trying so hard as my child is going through this cerebral palsy journey to be an advocate for him and educate myself the best as possible of all these things that could be part of his reality. And they warned us from the day he was born that he could have seizures because of his brain injury. And the one good thing, well, maybe not the one good thing, but something good that they did confirm with us at the hospital was he did have a grade 2 bleed. There was a moment there, so originally when he was born they told us it was a grade 2, and then we had a neurologist tell us later on, like when he was like 3 months old, she's like, oh no, it was a grade 4. And I was like, that's really bad because that's like the worst possible bleed. And then at the hospital again they confirmed to us that it was a grade 2 when we went just barely, as they were looking at his old MRIs, and so that's pretty reassuring because most kiddos with a grade 2 usually don't have any severe kind of like life-altering problems from that. And Isaac has cerebral palsy and he will have it for the rest of his life, but you know, the level that it affects him is so different for every person. And right now he's still, with all of his stuff that he can't do right now, he's still testing as if he's going to walk just fine and do all those things. It's just going to take him a long time, and he's not quite old enough to start any treatments yet. We literally have an appointment set up in like 2 weeks to start on that journey, which I am so excited for, and I really want to document their progress with that. That's all the updates I have. So thank you for coming and watching my video. That's just what happened to us, and I just wanted to share it just in case you have seen your child do this or something, or you've been through something similar. And I haven't been able to respond to every single message. We had literally I probably had over 200 people on Instagram message me, and I'm so grateful for your guys' prayers and love and support. I can't believe how incredible of a support system I have on social media. It's like the most incredible blessing in disguise. So I just want to say thank you, and please like and subscribe. I'm really trying to grow my family here on YouTube. I have an awesome big old family on TikTok. I've got a pretty big family on Instagram. We're really trying to build up my YouTube because I truly love making videos, and I've wanted to do this for such a long time. I really wish I documented my pregnancy and everything that happened in the NICU, but I just wasn't brave enough to do it then. But now I am. So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. Follow me over on Instagram and TikTok, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!